Hey everybody, this is Wes Stuckey with Security Solutions. Just wanted to do a quick walkthrough video on setting up a point-to-multipoint wireless network or wireless bridge using the outdoor access points available from Trendnet. So this scenario comes up quite often, and this is the general design that we're going to go with. So basically we're going to have a unit at the head end right here in the center, and it's going to have a wireless bridge to another pole or a building off to the left using one of the directional access points, and then another location off to the right. So you could add multiple locations and do multiple bridges. Just understand that you're going to be sharing the bandwidth, and I'll get into that here in just a second. So these are the outdoor access points that we're going to be using today. There's actually another directional access point from Trendnet, but I typically like to use the 5 gigahertz capable access points simply because you have more bandwidth and more channels to pick from. So the two access points that we're going to use today are the TEW-840APBO, which is a directional unit on the left-hand side. Those come as single units or as a pre-configured kit. And then you have the TEW-841APBO on the right-hand side, which is a dual band omnidirectional. So a couple notes about each one of these. The directional units on the left-hand side are, as I said, directional. So they have the pre-configured kit. So it's basically two of those units that are programmed to talk to each other. Comes with the injectors and everything. You basically just hang them and go. Depending on how far you're going, depends on how much time you need to spend aiming and adjusting. But pretty much if you have free line of sight, so you're talking 10 to 15 feet, no obstructions, then you're good to go. Now, these have a max range of about a mile. And if you're going to go a mile, you're going to have to mount these higher than Willie Nelson. But most of our installers aren't going that far. You're typically going a couple hundred feet, maybe 1,000 feet, maybe 2,000 feet. You know, like I said, if you're going a couple hundred feet, 10 to 15 feet off the earth, and have good horizontal field of view, 10 to 15 feet of clear line of sight, you're good to go. If you're going further, you have to get up a little bit higher. If you're going 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, you need to be up a little bit higher, and that's higher above your tallest obstruction. So if you have trees in the way, you need to be over the trees. The 841 is very similar for line of sight rules, except their max range is 1,800 feet. So being omnidirectional, that's your trade-off is your range decreases. But typically 1,800 feet is plenty. Benefits are, it's dual band, so we can use it as multi-purpose, or we can do a 2.4 gig bridge on one side, 5 gig bridge on the other, multi-hop, whatever we want to do. So it's a nice unit to have at your disposal as well. So once we're going to set these up, we're going to use our web browser to set everything up, and you need to be able to log into them. So you need the IP addresses. These are the default IPs. The 840 units, I'm going to stop using full part numbers. The 840s are the directionals on the left, and the 841 is the omnidirectional on the right. So the 840 units, if you order them in a kit, they're pre-configured at 10.50 and 10.51. If you just have a single unit, it's 10.100. And 841 is also 10.100 by default, but the difference is it is set up for DHCP. So if you have a router or DHCP server that you're plugging into, it's going to automatically get a different IP according to your network. So just be aware of that. So this is going to be how you want to set these up initially. If you have ordered the 840s as a kit, you're going to want to just do these one at a time because they're already pre-configured to talk to each other. But if you have single units in an 841, then this is how you want to connect them to start with. So everything is going to be powered up using the injectors, all wired back to a central switch, plugged into your computer. You don't necessarily need the internet or a network to get these units programmed. You can see I've already set my IP addresses. So my head end unit in the center is going to be 86.10, and then I'm going to have a directional to the left 86.12 and to the right 86.13. And what we're going to do is go ahead and set up our first bridge. There's a couple things that we need to do before we get to that point, and I'll show you. Here's the login interface for my 841 and 840 and the other 840. Okay, so I can reach everybody. All right, so first things first, log into your head end unit, your 841. And this is the information you're going to need when you're programming this bridge. I simply just copy and paste this top part of the status page, copy and paste it into a notepad document, just so that I have everything at my fingertips. While anything's rebooting, I can double check, make sure I have all the programming correctly. So I've done this for each of these units already, basically just copy and paste right here. And what we're going to do, the head end unit is going to need the 5 gigahertz MAC addresses for each of the bridge pair that we're going to program to come back to the head end. And then these remotes need the 5 gigahertz MAC address for the head end unit. So just be aware, depending on what unit you have, you're going to have multiple MAC addresses. You know, one for the LAN, one for the 2.4 gig wireless if you have a dual band, you know, your head end, and then one for the 5 gig. So if we're doing a 5 gig bridge, use the 5 gig MAC addresses. So on the head end unit here, first things that we want to do is go to wireless. And you have two columns. You have one for 2.4 gig and one for 5 gig. By default, these are by default in access point mode. So what we're going to do is make it into a bridge. So we have a couple different options. We're using WDS. So we can make it a WDS access point or a WDS bridge. The big difference between these two, WDS access point is going to allow us to use it as a bridge, but it's also going to have a local 5 gig broadcast that we could use for computers, cameras, access control, whatever it is that you want to connect to the 5 gig network. But of course, you have to make sure that other equipment is 5 gig capable. Otherwise, we could use the 2.4 side as the local Wi-Fi network. So I'm sure the wheels are turning on a couple different scenarios that you're working with. The next option is WDS bridge. So if we just want to use this head end unit strictly as a bridge, we don't need local Wi-Fi access on 5 gig, we would just choose WDS bridge, and that's what we're going to do. The next step is to choose your channel. You know, and this is based on your site survey that you've already done. And you're going to pick the best channel. And in my case, I'm picking channel 48. So I'm going to choose channel 48, save that. Then I'm going to go down here and set up my WDS link settings. So this is where you tell this unit what other units it's connecting to, what its neighbors are. Okay. So you turn security as AES, you set up a passphrase, and this is where you put in the 5 gigahertz MAC addresses from your other two units. So you'll see here that I can double check FDB9CD and FDB9CF. Okay, so that looks right. Those are my two remote units, and I'm programming my head end. So I'm just going to scroll down a little bit more. Click Save. And any configuration changes you make, you're just going to need to apply it after you save it, so that when the unit can make this its running config, and when it reboots, it's going to have this configuration saved. So right now, we've set up one half of the first bridge. This is the directional unit that I have as the first one, and I'm going to go ahead and program the rest of this. So this would be the left-hand side of that slide, the diagram that I showed you. I already have this information copy and pasted into my trusty notepad. So same basic interface, go down to network wireless, and right here, this looks a little different. You have this section that you didn't have with the other one. So basically the 840s ship in TDMA, and this is just a wireless protocol that they use to communicate. So you're going to want to change this to CSMA so that you can communicate with the 841. So I would change it to CSMA, and then before I change anything else, I would just scroll down and save it, and then apply it. All right. So it's going to take just a second for that unit to take its changes and reboot. I'll go to my other remote unit, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to change it to CSMA so we can talk to the 841 and save it. And don't forget to apply it. Okay, our unit is finished rebooting. So this is 86.12, which is our first directional unit. Now we need to go in there and we need to do the same types of things that we did with the 841. So we have it in CSMA, which is good. Now it's automatically going to be an access point by default. Here we have the same choices. We can either do WDS access point, which means it's going to be a bridge partner, and it's also going to have its local 5 gig SSID for clients, or we can simply make it strictly a bridge. So that's what we're going to do. Now we're going to go into channel selection. We're going to pick the same channel that we set up for our head end. Channel 48. Save that. Then we're going to scroll down a little bit more. And you're going to have your WDF link settings. So you have a couple different choices, WEP and AES for security. You're going to choose AES. There's your same passphrase that you use in the other unit. And you're going to want to enable and program in the MAC address for the 5 gigahertz of your head end. In this case, the 841, which we can see ends in FD0600. So I can enable that, save it, and apply it. And now this unit is becoming a WDS bridge. So getting back to our diagram here, effectively what we've done is created this first 5 gigahertz bridge between 8610 and 8612. So what you'll see here is we have this wireless link, and then we still have our wired link. If you've been around networks for any length of time, you know that you can't have a loop. So what you want to do right now is you want to unplug that cable from the PoE injector on your first directional, go into your switch because you're not going to need it. You can communicate with 8612 using this Wi-Fi connection right now if you've done everything correctly. And you'll know you've done everything correctly because if you don't unplug that cable, all your blinky lights will go really fast and you won't be able to log into anything because you've created that loop. So now we can go back to our head end unit and we can go to our connections tab. And this will show us the status of the connections that we have programmed. So I've already programmed our second unit here, doing the WDS bridge, choosing the correct channel with the AES passphrase, and I input the same MAC address so that unit can talk back to the head end. Once you do that, you want to make sure you unplug the cable again because you don't want this loop. So now that you've unplugged the cable, basically you have this completed system design. So you can communicate with both sides with all the units using your computer connected to the head end unit or the switch 8610. So we can go back to our head end unit and see that both of these links are up. Okay, and you have a -52, -56, whatever your RSSI, your signal strength. Real quickly, this is a negative number, so the closer to 0, the better your signal strength. You know, -25, -30, pretty good, really good. -50 is good. -60, 70, marginal. When you get into the 70s, high 70s, 80s, not good. So, and you can see this unit's rebooting right here. So, this will give you your signal strength and your connections. So, simply we can check the same thing at the other end and it'll reflect basically the same thing. This number changes periodically. So it could go up or down just a little bit, but that's your signal strength. And this is the third unit that we have programmed. So same basic interface. I think it's still rebooting. So the other things that I like to do, we know how we have connectivity. Now we just need to make sure that we have everything pointed as well as we can and adjusted. We have good clear line of sight. What kind of bandwidth can we expect? So I like to use this under tools and speed test. And simply I can do a speed test to one of my other units that's out there. So 192, 168, 86.12. So I can run this and it's going to run a speed test against that remote unit. So this is telling me it's roughly 132 megabits a second, which isn't bad considering these units are face down on the floor. Your numbers are going to vary, but just kind of have an understanding of that. Typically 5 gig for these units, within a couple hundred feet of each other, are going to be north of 100 meg, south of 400 meg. So that all depends on your environment. The other thing you can do, the only other tool that I really use in here is device discovery. So you can go and scan the network and it's going to look for other wireless access points that are on this network. And it'll tell you, the model number, what mode it's in, if it's a, AP mode, or if it's a WDS bridge mode, or if it's in a WDS AP mode, which means that it has its own little local Wi-Fi broadcast and it's a bridge partner. MAC address, firmware, IP address, stuff like that. So it's helpful. So really, that's the basics of what we did. So once you get it, it's not very hard. You just have to be a little bit organized. And if you could take a second to comment below, let us know how you're using these units and successes that you've had, that would be great. And if you need any additional support, definitely reach out to Trendnet, trendnet.com. And also, if you're a professional installer, I'd encourage you to check out the Uptrend Partner Program. So you can go to trendnet.com, click on the partners link at the top, and it's going to give you your partner benefits. Basically, you're going to get a little bit of a discount on your purchases through distribution, but you also get North American tech support and some other advantages. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you. You can also leave comments below on suggestions for future videos. We appreciate you using Trendnet. Have a great day.